Hello, and welcome to Overlooked Headlines. We're the podcast designed to share headlines from America and around the world that have been disregarded or overlooked, but are critical to our lives and well-being. It's our mission to inform with the headlines and then inspire through biblical words, which we call His Lines, that once heard and applied will help to strengthen our faith in God as we navigate this journey called life. Now, here's the host of Overlooked Headlines, Jeff Bass.
Hello again, and welcome to another episode of Overlooked Headlines. I'm Jeff Bass. Here's our headline breakdown. Largest grocery store chain in Japan uses AI to monitor staff smiles and speech tones. Photobucket will begin to sell users biometric data, including fingerprints, voice, genetics, and gestures to train AI with no choice to opt out. And our top headline, most Americans worry about paying bills than during the Great Recession. And as always, we will close with His Lines. Here's our first headline. Largest grocery store chain in Japan uses AI to monitor staff smiles and speech tones. Japan's largest grocery store chain recently became the world's first company to use AI to track the smiles and emotional state of staff who interact with customers, and it will be rolled out at all 240 Japanese locations. According to a report by South China Morning Post, the company debuted what they call Mr. Smile, developed by local tech firm InstaVR. Mr. Smile can accurately rate a shop assistant's service attitude, the paper says. It can analyze 450 different elements, including facial expressions, voice, volume, and tone of greetings. It also has, quote, game elements that incentivize staff to increase their scores by beating out their previous scores. The store trialed the system in 8 different stores with roughly 3,400 employees and said that service attitudes increased by up to 1.6 times over a period of 3 months. Also, the store said its goal was to standardize staff members' smiles and satisfy customers to the maximum. The company did not clarify if this feedback was from the employees or the results calculated by the artificial intelligence. CX Today reported that the move raises serious questions about the morality of pressuring workers to express themselves in a particular way. By pressuring agents to act in a particular manner that is deemed agreeable by the company, they are losing their individuality and freedom to express themselves as they see fit, the tech outlet said. This new AI rollout has ignited a discussion as to whether or not this is actually increasing workplace harassment, something that has been a big problem in Japan for many years. In Japan, is known as kasuhara, which is a form of habitual complaints and using derogatory language. This year, nearly half of the 30,000 staff surveyed who work in the service industry and other sectors reported experiencing customer harassment to Japan's biggest union. When the service industry workers are forced to smile according to a standard, it looks to me like another form of customer harassment, said one person. Smiles should be a beautiful, heartfelt thing and not be treated like a product, another said. And a third employee added, quote, people are different, and they also express their affections differently. Using a machine to standardize people's attitude sounds cold and silly. In 2022, New Zealand implemented Smile Security in the city of Hastings, which will monitor and surveil Kiwis' speech and actions, and such negative ones could trigger the police to assess the situation and visit the tagged offender. We'll watch that story. Our second headline, Photobucket will begin to sell users biometric data, including fingerprints, voice genetics, and gestures to train AI with no choice to opt out. Photobucket, one of the largest subscription-based image and video hosting platforms, recently updated its terms of service that says all users and customers' personal photography and videos will be sold to third-party platforms to help train their artificial intelligence programs. And users have no choice but to accept these new rules. Photobucket's controversial updated terms of service recently went into effect, leaving many customers and privacy advocates fuming. The new agreement tells users that the company can not only share users' materials for free, they can now also sell customers' very specific biometric data to third-party entities, which can include being used to train AI algorithms. The company states, "You grant us a worldwide, non-exclusive, perpetual, irrevocable, royalty-free, transferable right and license to copy, stream, post, display, publicly perform, and reproduce the shareable user uploaded content so that we may offer the services to you and to others at your request, e.g. image sharing and hosting by you, as well as other rights set forth herein. You further grant Photobucket a worldwide, non-exclusive, perpetual, irrevocable, royalty-free, transferable right and license to copy, convey, distribute, stream, post, publicly display, posted elsewhere, publicly perform, reproduce, public user uploaded content, and create derivative works from it, meaning things based on it, whether in print or any kind of electronic version that exists now or is later developed for any purpose, including a commercial purpose with the right to sublicense such rights to others. In particular, to the extent permitted by the laws of your region, you grant us the right to commercialize, including the right to license or sell your public user uploaded content to third parties for the scanning and processing of public user uploaded content, including extracting physical features of your biometrics information, solely for the purpose of artificial intelligence and machine learning, training, and the subsequent uses derived therefrom. By agreeing to this biometric policy, you grant Photobucket, to the extent permitted by the laws of your region, the right to sell, lease, trade, or otherwise profit from the disclosure of your public user uploaded content, which may contain biometric information that may be extracted. Tech repairman and right to repair advocate Louis Rossman said in a video post that out of all of the companies and brands he has exposed for doing this type of behavior for a long time, this currently takes the cake for the worst company of the year. Rossman notes that customers are simply opted in and have no way to opt out, even if customers have not interacted with the platform for lengthy periods of time. Moreover, Rossman contends Photobucket is basically trolling customers with their claims of abiding by the FTC's guidelines. However, Photobucket is just the tip of the iceberg. Last year, it was reported that practically all major auto manufacturers are tracking very specific data on drivers and passengers, including things such as preferences, characteristics, psychological trends, predispositions, behavior, attitudes, intelligence, abilities, and aptitudes, all which are tracked, shared, and then sold. Very interesting. Stay where you are. I've got more overlooked headlines.
Still to come, our top headline. And don't miss his lines, right here on Overlooked Headlines.
Now, here's our top headline. Most Americans worry about paying bills than during the Great Recession. Do you remember how painful the Great Recession was? That was in 2008. 2008 and the years immediately following were definitely a very dark chapter in our history. But a new study has actually found that the percentage of Americans that worry they won't be able to pay their bills is actually higher today than it was back then. Slowly but surely, our economic strength has been fading and our standard of living has been falling. Unfortunately, now we've reached a point where a very large portion of the U.S. population is really struggling. According to a poll that was just released, almost 40% of all U.S. adults say they worry most or all of the time that their family's income won't be enough to meet expenses. Many Americans regularly worry they won't be able to even make ends meet. Nearly 4 in 10, or 39% of U.S. adults, say they worry most or all of the time that their family's income won't be enough to meet expenses, according to a new CNN poll. That's up from 28% who expressed those concerns in December of 2021, and is similar to the numbers seen during the Great Recession. Those numbers were 37%. To cope, significant shares of Americans said they are adding side jobs, cutting down on driving, and putting more expenses on their credit cards. Sadly, the economic pain that we are experiencing now is just beginning. Ordinary Americans from coast to coast are being absolutely crushed by rising prices, and that isn't going to change anytime soon. In an article posted about this new survey, one woman that works for the CDC admitted that she was recently forced to move because costs have risen so aggressively. Quote, "The grocery store is just outrageous right now," she said, "but it's not just that. Everything has gone up. Clothing, my insurance, and more," said Angela Russell, an Ohio resident who works as a program analyst at the CDC, which is the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. Russell, who has 2 adult children and 3 grandkids, said she recently moved out of her rental home in Cincinnati in favor of one in a rural area where the rent is cheaper. Other recent surveys have come up with results that are even more alarming. For example, one discovered that a whopping 71% of Americans are stressed out about their ability to afford everyday expenses. 71% of Americans say they're stressed by their ability to afford everyday expenses. Americans most regularly spend money on groceries, phone bills, utilities, gasoline and rent, and mortgage payments. Grocery bills frustrate Americans more than any other regular expense. Utilities, rent, mortgage payments, gasoline, and insurance payments round out the top 5 most annoying expenses. That is most of the country. Unsurprisingly, younger generations are being hit particularly hard by the pain of inflation also. Financial stress levels are highest among millennials, 77%, followed by Generation Z at 75% and Generation X, 74%. Baby boomers reported experiencing the least financial stress at 59%, but it was still more than half of those surveyed. Another recent survey found that 80% of Americans have observed a notable increase in grocery store prices. According to a study, 80% of Americans say they have felt a notable increase in grocery costs in the recent years. More than a quarter of respondents said the increased cost has led them to occasionally skip meals, while about 1/3 say they spend more than 60% of their monthly income on mandatory expenses such as food, utilities, and rent. Food has certainly become ridiculously expensive, but we actually spend far more money, believe it or not, on housing. Today, the typical household spends about 12% of total income on food and about 33% of total income on housing. According to data from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, The top three annual expenses for the average American household in 2022, that was the most recent data available, were housing at 33%, transportation 16.8%, and food 12.8%. For most Americans, spending money in these areas is unavoidable. Housing costs have been rising much faster than the overall rate of inflation. And we just learned that home prices reached yet another new all-time record high last month. Home prices hit a new high in June for the second straight month, the latest sign that the housing market is unaffordable to millions of Americans. The spring home buying season, usually the busiest time of year for the housing market, was a dud this year. Home sales declined in June for the fourth straight time on a monthly basis. So the combination of high prices and elevated mortgage rates has made home ownership less attractive to renters and deterred current homeowners from moving. Meanwhile, homelessness in the United States is at the highest level ever recorded, and it has been growing at the fastest pace ever recorded. At this point, approximately 3 out of every 5 Americans believe that we are already in a recession right now. You don't need to be a financial genius to know that times are tough for plenty of Americans. With that in mind, a majority of people actually think the economy is doing even worse than the experts say it is. If we stay on the path that we are on, it won't be too long before we witness a meltdown of epic proportions. Don't move. His lines are coming up.
Hey, if you're enjoying this episode, then we'll think you'll love connecting with us on our social media platforms as well, because we post frequent news bites, tips, and alerts to keep you informed and inspired. Now, let's get back to more overlooked headlines with Jeff Bass.
Now it's time for His Lines, where we take a closer look at these headlines from a biblical perspective, taken from the Bible, which is God's word. As we watch everything that's happening in the world today, fear of the future can easily overwhelm us. But we can overcome the fear through the simple act of remembering. That's right. We must remember our Creator. In Colossians chapter 1, verse 16 through 17, Paul tells us, "For by him all things were created that are in heaven and that are on earth, visible and invisible, whether thrones or dominions or principalities or powers. All things were created through him and for him." These verses say that he who created also controls. He who authored life is authority over life. Life, with all its fearful debris, rotates around the axis of God's sovereignty because God is sovereign. This doesn't mean that bad things won't happen, but that God will tell us what to do when we don't know what to do. Also, we can count on him to give us sanity in the midst of all the panic. We lose sight of this because fear of the future blurs our perception. One bad report from the doctor, a Wall Street market crash, and God shrinks in our fear-skewed perception. But the truth is, if we remember our Creator, we are the ones that shrink, not God. You see, confidence in God's control puts us at ease no matter what lies ahead. Jesus, for example, knew exactly what suffering awaited him in Jerusalem, yet he didn't shrink from the future. He led the way to Jerusalem. Mark chapter 10, verse 32 reads, "They were on their way up to Jerusalem with Jesus leading the way, and the disciples were astonished, while those who followed were afraid." Again, he took the 12 aside and told them what was going to happen to him. Despite what we see or what we can't see, what we feel or dread, God's word has purpose. Mistakes, mishaps, and even man's mayhem don't have the final word. We must put our faith and confidence in God and God alone. Psalm 62 verse 1 says, "My soul finds rest in God alone. My salvation comes from him. He alone is my rock and my salvation. He is my fortress. I will never be shaken." That's his lines. And as always, this has been Overlooked Headlines. I'm Jeff Bass, keeping you informed and inspired. Stay blessed.
Thanks for joining us. We hope you've been informed and inspired. Like us, tell a friend, and connect with us via Facebook, YouTube, or email us at neveroverlooked@gmail.com. That's neveroverlooked@gmail.com. Check us out next time on Overlooked Headlines with Jeff Bass.